Hello, people. Happy Sunday. We are back. Stay sick with Kit with another live stream, another great conversation. You could be doing anything this Sunday, but you're here about to chill with us as we delve into this conversation. You know me, I always bring great guests. Some of you in the YouTube space are no stranger to this next guest I'm about to bring on and have a great conversation with. We've done a few live streams together before. She always brings the good knowledge, the good heat, good back and forth, as well as insightful things. And she's been on a journey. So I'm very excited to bring her onto the stage. And guys, of course, if you're tuning in after the fact, still feel free to show some love, give a like, give a comment on what you think of the conversation, and definitely catch us on the next live as well, because we always love the engagement that you guys bring. So without further ado, let me bring in Tanisha to the stage. Tanisha, how are we?
Hello. Hi, I'm so good. I'm super blessed. It's a beautiful Sunday. How are you feeling?
100%. I'm good. Guys, why is she glowing right now? I feel like the weather's better over there than it is here. What's going on?
Yeah,
I
maybe.
know. And like, we were saying before, you're in a different background. You've just moved. How are you feeling? You feeling all
I
settled?
have. I feel great. I mean, everyone says I am glowing since I relocated. So I think it's been a great transition so far. My energy feels good. I'm
Mm,
adapting in a positive way. So I'm good.
we love that. We love that. Well, we're no stranger to talking, of course, and talking about all things dating, relationships. So
Mhm.
let's jump in with something. I want us to start with the drizzle movement, right?
Okay.
And this is bringing a lot of eyes on it. A lot of guys are kind of basking in it and kind of having a play with it. A lot of women are,
Mhm.
or some women are kind of getting very turned off by it. A lot of shade. So what's your take on
Mhm.
the drizzle movement happening right now?
Yeah, so as a disclaimer for anyone who doesn't watch my channel, I am super against anything that I think is divisive or isn't leading to productive conversations so that men and women can get on the same page, even just a little bit. So when I heard drizzle, I heard some people saying that in my comments, and I'm like, what is this? Like, it's giving me like red pill, toxic red pill nature. So I didn't fully understand it. Then I watched a couple videos and I thought it was hilarious, honestly. I'm a super sarcastic person.
Yeah.
It's just my sense of humor. And so it feels like satire to me, just kind of making fun of some of the expectations that a lot of women do place on men that are seemingly unrealistic or aren't really beneficial to a healthy relationship. So
Mm,
I'm here for it. Now, I know it can go in a toxic direction and people begin bickering. I think that some women may not fully understand what it means, or that men are actually making fun of some of the things that we say versus being serious about it. So I
mm,
think all of that kind of goes into effect as well. But then I also think that people just don't like being called out on their stuff. So to your point where you were like women are upset, yeah, if you're a woman who's like, yeah, after 3 dates or 3 months or whatever, I expect you to pay my bills or I want you to do XYZ. If someone calls you out on that, it's not gonna feel good. So I can definitely see all angles of it, but I think it's funny. I mean, I'm all for again calling people out on double standards.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, instantly, I found it funny. Obviously, I would assume most guys obviously joking and kind of it's an attempt to hold a reflection up. But I
Mhm.
guess I'm just kind of surprised because I think that some women genuinely think those guys are being serious. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I wonder why do they not see that maybe there's a level of sarcasm there, or it's a little bit tongue in cheek, or do they really is it becoming more of a thing where guys are kind of expecting women to kind of foot the bill now? What do you think?
I mean, I think it is a real thing. I do believe that some guys are probably taking it more seriously, and my guess is that it's because they're frustrated, right? So
Mm,
if you feel like there's some movement that plays on your frustration where it's like, "Oh, finally I feel heard," or I feel like people understand me, then yeah, you're going to take it seriously. But I mean, we see this all the time even when it comes to like the 50-50 debates, like who pays for the first date, just kind of shifting from things that have been the norm. I do think that more men are gravitating toward that.
yeah, 100%. I mean, this kind of plays into, gender roles. and
Yes.
kind of, the way it used to be to way things are starting
Mhm.
to kind of manifest themselves. So for you, in your experience, what have you seen a shift in comparison to, let's say, even 5 years ago? Is it swinging back one way?
Mhm.
Is it going much further a certain way? Like, what's your experience been?
Oh, that's a good question about the shift between the past decade.
Mm,
I think that we are in a state where we're definitely moving away from traditional values, but I think that people still want the benefits of being traditional. And
mm.
so we're kind of in this constant tug of war. And I know people hate when I do this, but I think both men and women do it, right? So from the perspective of, I always say with women, it's usually the financial part, right? So you want men to do X, Y, and Z for you financially, but you don't want to live up to more traditional values.
Mm,
On the men's side, or women, I guess on the opposite, and we get frustrated about the double standards when it comes to sex or just how we handle ourselves. And men are like, well, if you want XYZ result, you have to be this way. So again, we're both arguing that we want people or the other party to be traditional, but we're not handling ourselves in that manner.
yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. But I do believe that we're starting to see, or at least I hope that we're starting to see that it doesn't make sense to be that way.
Mm,
And again, just speaking from a woman's point of view, from the whole gender roles, what type of, I guess, role you're supposed to play in a relationship. We have TikTok trends where girls are like, I want to be a stay at home girlfriend now, right? I don't know if you've seen that, but
yep.
that's becoming a thing. And it's like, well, that's funny because everyone was fighting to not be that. So now we're seeing, like, hey, even though gender roles had some negatives, some cons in the past, things that could have been tweaked, it may have made sense. That structure may have benefited things in the long run.
Yeah, it's mad. I mean, it's like you were fighting to get out the home. Now you're saying you want to get back in. Like, what's going
Right.
on?
Now I want to get back in. I don't want to go to work. Right.
Like, you got out to the real world. Was like, nah, this ain't for me. This ain't for me. I think,
Yeah.
and I can hear some of the guys, kind of maybe saying this, that back, the whole thing. Let's say, like the six-figure earner, that all of that. Let's say the financial, right? That never used to be a thing, but men used to be the sole providers before. So I think a lot of guys are kind
Mhm.
of looking, they're going, so you guys are earning money. Some of you guys are out earning men now. Some women are out earning men. But now the provider standards has now just gone up with that. And so I guess,
Yeah.
why do you think that's the case? Because I guess you could think, oh, well, if a woman's earning her own money, then the more she earns, the less it matters that the guy would earn himself. So why do you think that's the case?
Right. In addition to the fact that we just want the benefits of traditional standards, I think that we're just very individualistic in
Mm.
the I'm inclined to say the US, but I don't know, maybe you can give me your perspective on this as well. Cause I watch some of your videos and I hear what the women say, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's not just a thing in the States, but
It's a Western thing for sure. It's a Western thing.
right, it's just a Western thing. I think that we're just super individualistic, and I don't think that we consider the bigger picture, right? So,
Mm.
if your goal is to be in a long term relationship or one day you hope to get married, I would hope that you would want to approach it from a mindset of it's not, okay, he makes 100K, I make 80K. How do we figure out these things so that we can both maintain our financial stability separately? But our household is 180K. Like, how can we work together? And I don't
Mm.
know. I just think a lot of the arguments are stupid. Like, again, the whole 50-50 thing. If there is a gap in income, why are we arguing 50-50? What is the best thing for the home? Kind of going into gender roles, like women are expected to be the ones who cook, for example, right? Very traditional norm. If the guy is a better cook, why can't he do it as well? So it's just make it make sense. Like, instead of everything being a debate for no reason, how are we operating together so that we're thriving as a unit versus focusing
Mm.
on what is beneficial for me?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, each to their own for sure. I think with men and women, I think there's a lot of pride. There's a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of
Oh
pride
yeah.
in terms of not giving the other person something because I don't want them to think that they're entitled to this.
Hmm.
Where do you think men struggle to swallow their pride? Oh, the
um,
list is gonna come out. She's like, well,
no, no, I want to think about this before I go into it. So I
yeah,
think
go for it.
uh, from the aspect of understanding that women are just more emotional in nature. So men are very logical. And a lot
Mm,
of the arguments I think from my experience come from the fact that women are viewing things from an emotional standpoint and the man is more logical. And
mm,
so I think in some moments men could be a little bit more understanding of that and be like, hey, okay, I understand. Like I might not agree, but okay, maybe you're right, or I'll do better and I'll do this. More of that compromising piece. But when you're
yeah.
holding on to what you feel is right and you refuse to let it go, that ego or that pride portion kicks in. And I think that
Do you
that
think? Do
part
you think?
is
Do
what
you think
men
that's?
struggle
Do
with.
you think that's men? Because I think a lot of the time it's usually. I mean, there's the funny trope of like, you know, fellas, even if you're right, you're still wrong. Do you know what I mean? Is
No,
that
I mean,
very
I
much
think
still
that
men or what?
I think it's both. I think we're both very egotistical. I do
Sure.
believe that men are just stereotyped as being more egotistical. And I think that in a lot of ways, just the ego misogynistic as people say, like that
Mm,
whole persona they society feels like men may have to adapt some of those traits just to be more successful in the career place or things like that. So I think men are stamped with that persona more often,
I see.
but women are definitely egotistical too.
Yeah, it's mad. It's mad. Have you ever had to pay on the first date?
I've never had to pay on the first date.
Not
I
even
don't know if I've
50-50?
ever paid on the first date. No, I don't think I've ever done 50-50. I have paid for dates, but I can't say that the first one is one that I've ever paid for.
Okay, so if you went on a date, if a guy
Yeah.
asked you out on a date and he was like, "Hey, like, we're gonna split this," how would you take that? Would you take that a type of way or no?
Hmm. I
She's like, "Fuck
think
him, I'm never seeing
that
him again."
I don't know if I would say I would never see him again, but I probably would be rubbed the wrong way only because, again, first impressions, right? And if you ask me to go somewhere, it's like, that doesn't really sit well with me. But also, we could have done something that wasn't like a cost attachment, and we wouldn't have that argument. So maybe
Sure.
we're planning to go to a festival or something like that of that sort, where it's still a good experience, but we're not having to worry about those type of dynamics. That can be touchy for a first date.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Since we last spoke, you've gone into a relationship, if you don't mind me saying.
Yes. Yeah.
And how and you don't have to share anything you don't want to, but do you find yourself in this relationship kind of sitting in the more typical gender role that you've been in before? Is it
Mhm.
different now? Like what's that experience been for you?
Oh, that's a really good question because I was actually reflecting on this today, and I'm like,
Okay.
I think that being in a relationship really tests your nature in the sense of realizing that you can't be egotistical or selfish. Like you either have to
Mm,
choose, do you want to be right or do you want the relationship? And so again, just thinking about the greater good for the relationship. Sometimes it's like, well, I don't want to do this, or I shouldn't have to do this, or whatever the case may be, right? Holding on to those pieces. But
mm,
there might be things that just make sense for the both of you. In terms of gender roles, I mean, I think I would say our dynamic is probably more traditional. Like we
okay.
help each other out here and there. I don't mind paying for dates. He doesn't mind cooking, but the bulk of the cooking and things are me. If we go out, he's usually the one who pays. So it kind of naturally just falls in that order for us.
Have you always had that dynamic in previous relationships or is this like pretty new for you?
I think that in the bulk of my relationships, I would say I was gonna say it's probably been more traditional, but that's kind of hard to say because sometimes, like depending on where we were financially, like maybe that wouldn't be the case. So we kind of adjust based on that. But generally speaking, I think that I do take more of a traditional role in my relationships.
Yeah, yeah. I think some
Hmm.
guys experience um women becoming more traditional as they get older.
Ah,
Like,
okay.
as she, like, when she's younger, she's dating, she's like, "Yeah, like, if I pay, fine, whatever." But then when she starts getting to a point where she's looking to settle down, have something more serious, it's like, okay, now she's looking for a more traditional man, the more she's
Mhm.
kind of getting close to the point of her settling down. Why do you think that
Mhm.
happens? I mean, would you say that does that line up with what you've seen? Like, why do you think that happens if that's the case?
I think that reality hits people when they get older and also wisdom, right? So if you're not really
Wisdom.
thinking long
It's
term,
better when
if you're
somebody else pays
18
for it.
to
Yeah.
if you're not thinking like long term when you're 18, 20, 21, however old you are,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter if you're finding a partner who would be a good mother or a good father. You're going for what is interesting or entertaining for you at that time.
Mm,
But as women get older and they realize, hey, maybe I do want a family one day, or I just want a relationship where I can be with someone who makes me feel safe, makes me feel secure in our relationship. A lot of those qualities that women want in a man, it tends to be with the traditional masculine role. He's providing for you, he's protecting you, like he makes you feel emotionally safe. And so you start to think about those things more. Also, when you've had a lot of negative experiences because you've been choosing the wrong people, it's like, all right, I keep going through the same cycle about one, two, three, four plus times. Maybe I need to shake it up a little bit.
yeah.
So I think it's kind of a mix of all of those things.
Yeah, I hear that, I hear that. What would you say to the guys who, not every guy, but some guys can feel a bit jaded
Mhm,
if there's a girl, for example, who he meets who hasn't been moving in a traditional way while she's been
mhm.
dating, but now she's like, "Oh, no, like, I don't sleep with guys on the first date anymore," or, "I am being abstinent till marriage." And he's like, "But I know the 10 guys that you were being physical with prior to me just willy-nilly. Like, why am I having to wait?"
Yeah,
What would you
yeah,
say to those guys? Because I think a lot of the time those guys can get quite jaded in that fact and kind of feel like they're getting a hard deal. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. No, that is a very, very valid feeling. I think that it really needs to be an honest talk, and I feel like these are talks that probably need to happen before you guys are even at the point of thinking of having sex with each other. Because if he is receptive to the fact, okay, like you gave the example of the 10 guys that he knows, or for one, if he knows that, it's like, damn, like your business is out there in the street, girl. So it's
Yeah,
like if
big
it's out
facts.
there, then you have to navigate. I
Yeah,
don't think you should willy nilly be giving information if you guys are kind of he's asking and you want to answer, cool, but
yeah.
just be careful in that regard. But if he already knows, a talk like why were you operating like that? Like, did you learn something from this? Is this something that is like a spiritual or a religious journey for you? Like, I think that if men understand the why in it and the why makes
Mm,
sense for them or aligns with their own values or where they are in life, then they'll be more open to it. But if they just feel like, I mean, no, like I don't align with this reason, or I feel like I'm getting this short end of the stick, then maybe not. But then that means in that case that you two probably aren't aligned. So you
yeah.
should probably find someone else.
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing that I was speaking to someone today actually, talking about, her previous experience with men, with maybe someone that she was dating, and whether that was a point of contention for him. And one thing I said is that if you can, a lot of the time, people are looking for security and reassurance in the relationship.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, like, does this mean I should be worried? Does this mean that you're always going to choose me? Does this mean, are you going to operate that way again? And I think
Okay.
if I think it really helps women if they understand that a guy's just looking for reassurance, when you
Mm,
approach it from a way of, oh, I did that, but that really wasn't me. I didn't enjoy it. And I'm moving forward now because I realize that my value with sex and my body is just a lot more. There's value to it, and it's value that I don't want to be sharing easily. I think for a guy that just gives him a more vote of confidence of, oh, okay, she did that, but that wasn't she didn't do it because it was her. She did it because she was trying it and she's realized it's not her and now she's here. Does that make
okay.
sense? I think that really
That
helps.
does, yeah.
But I
So it's
think
interesting that you say
go on.
that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, 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 no. I was moving on, but yeah, go on. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's interesting that you say that because just from the conversations that I've had with women, I feel like most women are operating that way because of what you just said. So again, they learn from it, they realize they want better for themselves, whatever journey they're going on personally. And
Mm.
I don't know, maybe we're just not doing the best way of explaining that to men so that it's not being received in a way that's other than that. But I feel like most women are navigating that way because of that.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is I think some women, I think they feel a little bit of because they're not proud of it. Some women aren't proud of
Mhm.
it. They feel a little bit of shame with it. And so
Mm.
even when they think about it for themselves, even when they think about it for themselves, it's coming from a place of this isn't something that I'm happy about and I'm a bit shameful, a bit embarrassed. But I think when you accept, if they accept that it's part of their journey, it's like, oh, this is something that this was my experience, and now I'm here, and this is how I've grown, and I've learned that that's definitely not me. I remember I had a guest on my show who she was addicted to porn, would watch porn every day. She was very like very promiscuous. Do you know what I mean? Was like with a different guy every 3 weeks, etc. And then she got to a point where she started to see more value in herself, started treating sex differently, and now she's with a amazing man who she's engaged to. He's a really great
Oh,
guy, and she
good.
doesn't operate that way. And yeah, she said that when she kind of went on this journey, there were some guys who were turned off by it, but she had to accept it for herself,
Yeah.
not as a negative, but as a learning journey for her. So then when she translated it to the next guy, it wasn't something for him to be worried about. It was just something for him to go, "Oh, this is part of how she became who she is today." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the shame definitely plays a big part, and maybe that's why some women don't even go into explaining that that's why they feel that way, right? So if she doesn't explain that whole process of her journey, and the guy may know what her background is, even if he doesn't share it with her, he's
Mm,
like, okay, what you're telling me and what I know isn't aligning. So are you trying to play me? Like you just kind of use me for date. So I can definitely understand that.
yeah.
But that's a good example. I mean, with the consequences, that's a part of the journey. So understanding and embracing the consequences is big with
A
everything you do.
100% embracing the consequences, easier said than done. That is for sure.
Yes.
Um, why do you think women do feel shame with it? Because we live in a culture that encourages this behavior, not even encourage, but
Mhm,
celebrates it. So why
mhm.
why would they feel shame with it if society is telling them to do this, to engage in this way?
I have so many, I'm trying to think of which angle I want to take with this. So,
Yeah.
for one, a lot of this came from feminism or also from the sexual revolution movement. And I think with those two movements, with women spearheading them, sometimes we can act from more of an emotional space, right? This angers me. I don't like it. Like, let's make a movement. We're going to fight for it. And I don't know if we fully think about how that will impact things future in the long term. So
Okay.
I think that's a part of it. So that's how we start in that journey because we're listening to other women who are encouraging that. I meet some men who are like, yeah, I don't care if a woman does this and that. And I'm like, do you really not care? Or is it just because you want to have sex with women like that? Right. So you kind of have
Big
to take it with
facts.
a grain of salt of who you're getting that feedback from. But yeah, I think that we focus so hard on those movements and we don't think about how it's going to impact us in the long term.
Yeah. I'm starting to see a wave of women taking a taking a vote of abstinence when
Hmm.
it comes to sex.
Yeah.
Why do you think this is happening? Because it's like they've gone from having as much sex as they want to like, I'm not doing it anymore. What
Yep.
why is that happening? I even think you did as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely had a period of abstinence. For me, it was after I had a bad breakup. So
Okay.
I think that women are seeing that you learn a lot about yourself outside of being sexually connected with someone. And I
Mhm.
think that we also need to have deeper conversations about the connection that women have to sex. I made a video about this as well, talking about, is casual sex worth it? For a lot of women, and I think this is where we differ from men, but maybe this is the case for some men too, it's very rare for it to just be casual interactions. That's it. I walk away from it totally fine. A lot of times there's a deeper meaning. So if she feels low self worth, if she feels like that's a way that she has to get affection from men, she will use sex to get those temporary feelings and she may not realize it. So as
Mm,
time goes on and you keep doing that, and it's like, okay, I'm giving my body to people and then I feel empty, you realize that you're chasing a temporary high, and that in the long run ends up having a negative impact on you. And they're like, okay, let me take this vow of abstinence, even though we've already been talking about abstinence and waiting until marriage and not being promiscuous, right? Sometimes we have to realize that the grass is not greener and we can be very hard headed. So sometimes
mm,
we have to stick our hand in the fire to realize, hey, you're going to get burned if you do that. And so yeah, I think it's kind of a detox for a lot of women, but I always say we don't detox from things that are healthy for us, right? So you end up
mm.
learning it's not a healthy act, so I have to separate myself from it.
Yeah, big facts. And I think as well, one thing it does is it encourages men to treat sex casually with women as well.
Yeah.
Like we know that guys can treat sex casually, but that doesn't always mean that it's beneficial if they do, even though they can. And so I think this whole
Mhm.
thing of, you know, of not just encouraging it, but then what I don't get, if I'm being completely real, right, is
Mhm.
I've seen many women go through this journey of engaging in, being very sexually free and stuff like that, and that's all great. And then they get to the other side and they're like, this really wasn't good for me. And I see so many
Mhm.
with this journey, but what I don't see is I don't see those women relaying back to the younger women being like, "Yo,
Yes.
don't do this. Like this is not
Mhm.
going to work. If you want family and kids, if you want a type of guy, whatever, this path is not going to lead to that. It's going to lead to something else." So like I'm always just wondering like why don't we see that? Because this is why I get girls on my
Mhm.
channel. I would
Yeah.
come women on my channel, and you know me, I do everything from a place of love. But then I feel like
Yeah.
I try to say that. Sometimes it's received real well. Most of the times it is. But then I'm a guy saying it. Like,
Right.
why aren't the women telling the women? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I recently asked the same thing in one of my videos. I do think that women should be coaching other women. It makes me wonder if it's a shame part, kind of like what you said before, like women don't want to admit to other women in a public platform where they could be advising other women that they made mistakes. So a lot of it is just regretting past mistakes. But then it
Mm,
also makes you wonder, like, are we seeing younger women as a threat? Like, are we not wanting to steer them in the right direction because we don't want to see people doing better than we did? Like, does it make you feel some kind of
mm.
way if a woman starting out at 18, she has all the game, she moves strategically, she didn't have to go through half of the things that you went through? Are you happy for her because of that? Or does it make you feel, again, regret, or you wish you're envious because you wish you could have taken that pathway? I think that's probably a big piece of it too.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I just want to shout out Nesta for the first super chat of the night. We appreciate you, $10. It says, guess the guys have to accept a woman's born again new creature stage. All we can do is respect a woman's choice, not giving none if she's living as a nun. Interesting. Yeah, so a lot more women are also finding God, finding
Hmm.
Christ, getting more religious. And it's like it's like a lot of people are going from the casual liberal mindset when it comes to sex relationships, and it's swinging the other way, right? So it's like taking
Hmm.
a leave of abstinence, finding God again, being a born again. Do you know what I mean? Like, why do you think this is going hand in hand, like the whole abstinence thing, as well as finding God again or finding Christ?
Yeah. So for me personally, and I don't know what anyone's affiliations or beliefs are, but I do think that for me, when I'm going through times of hardship, or I just feel like I need guidance or direction,
Mm,
like we were just talking about, maybe some women aren't getting guidance from other people. And so who do you turn to if you didn't get those type of lessons from your mom, your aunt, your grandma, whatever the case may be? Is God for a lot of people. So I
mm,
think that is why the journey goes hand in hand. And I feel for everyone, if you're excelling and growing as a person, that would hopefully be your journey. I will say that I don't like that whole journey is demonized, because I see it a lot where men are like, well, we wanted you when you were in your 20s and now you're past 30 or whatever, and you want to spin the block. And it's like, I get the frustration. But a lot of women can feel like that too. Like the type of men that she may have wanted, right? Not saying that those men were right for her, but I'm
Mm.
saying that was what she wanted at that time. They weren't ready. And often they turn around and they're like, okay, I'm done being a player. I want to settle down now. But it's just more demonized when women do it. So
I
that
guess
that
I
is the
guess there is an
downside.
element you know what I'm gonna say. I guess the difference is
Mhm.
because women obviously have a lot of the bargaining power when they're
Mhm.
younger. And I think it was Orion, you know, Dr. Orion, he does psych hacks, that
Yes.
YouTuber, Dr.
I
Orion
love him.
Taraban.
Yeah.
He's great. And he says, and this is for the average person, not every woman, not every guy, but he says, you know, it's always around when the average like sexual desirability of a man starts to surpass that average sexual desirability of a woman. It's always around that
Mhm.
point where women are like, okay, cool, I wanna hunker down now. I wanna hunker down. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, I do think I do think there has to be some grace for that guys should give women. And a big part of it is because the current cultural narrative, I believe, doesn't guide women towards what they actually desire, at least for most women. And so,
Mhm.
and the most, it's unfortunate because I think a lot of the time, by the time a lot of women figure out that it's not good for them, they're in a position where guys are like, well, I wanted you before, but now you're trying
Yeah.
to come at me now. Do you know what I mean? Whereas guys, at least if we figure
Mhm.
it out 10, 15 years into our adult life, just the way of what women look for, we can make up for it later. Do you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I do think there needs to be some grace that guys do give women. But the other thing I was going to say actually as well, I think a big part of why I think more people, especially women, are kind of turning to God and Christ or religion is because I think a lot of men and women both seek security from each other, but in different ways. So I think a lot of time, you know, if a woman wants a guy who's stronger than her, makes more money, you know, older, more intelligent, you know, she wants to feel safe, she wants to feel secure, whether that's physically, emotionally, financially, the journey that she's on. And I think religion offers the narrative of security for women, like
Mhm.
the
Okay.
narrative of, you know, here's you have God, or you have a father, which is the guidance. God will bring you a
Mhm.
man when you're ready, you know, etc.
Yeah.
This is like these are the rules and parameters because we've had so much freedom without any rules or parameters. And I think what we're learning is that not that too much freedom is bad, but freedom without strong guidance, I think, is is not helping people towards what they actually want. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, freedom without guidance, but freedom without consequence as well, right? So, to your point, women, when we're at our prime, right, talking about sexual marketplace and things of that nature,
Yeah.
we can't go around and we like you today, and maybe we don't like you next week, and we can go on to the next one because we realize that there's just a men lining up, right? Whether they want us for the wrong or right reasons, that's a different story, but the access is there, and so we don't think about it. But when those consequences do start to build up, whether that be you're getting older, you have a reputation for yourself, whatever the case may be, then it's like, oh, I have to sit down and think about this. And I think it's
Mm,
just kind of like a human thing, if, and I guess maybe you can answer from the male perspective. Do you
mm.
think if men started out right from well, I won't say day one, that's kind of creepy, but year
Yeah, go on.
18, let's say,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
year 18, they can get any woman they want. It doesn't matter what their financial status is. Would they have discipline, or do you think they would just go out and get whomever they want because the access is there? I think it's a human tendency, honestly.
I mean, yeah, because the thing is, there are some guys who are like very attractive already when they're young adults, so
Hmm.
they do just very much indulge in that,
Right.
right? They
Hmm.
do. It is true. They're very much indulge in that because, especially if you're at school, you know, if you're at university and stuff, maybe uni's different because you're kind of half in the real world, half not really. But when you're at school, like financial position doesn't really play a factor into
Mhm.
like how desirable you are. It can to some degree, but usually it's like who's the most attractive, who's the most confident, who's the most dominant in their field if they do athletics or something like that, who's the most intelligent or smartest in their class. So yeah, guys definitely do indulge in that. But what I would say is that the reason I think it's a little bit different is because I don't it's not the same as a guy indulging in relationships and casual sex because guys naturally I think guys are more inclined to seek out casual sex anyway in
Mhm.
comparison to women. So if they have that access when they're younger, and it's true that sometimes, guys are reckless with that and they, get someone pregnant and then it's like, well, that's your life now. You have a
Mhm.
child or five. But I think when they get into the real world, and because we have access to everyone, they learn very quickly that if they don't have the financial capability, that they're not the hot stuff that they were in college.
Yep.
Because your equivalent 22-year-old girl in your class who you'll take a liking to, she's going out with a 30-year-old lawyer making 150K a year. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Um, but I think from guys that I've talked to, if they were in a position where they had a level of abundance, it gets old. Like it gets
Mm.
it gets old. Like you kind of get to a point, and if I'm being completely transparent, this has been my experience as well. You kind of get to a point where her just being very hot or very attractive isn't enough to give sexual energy to, because you start to
Mhm.
realize that, well, everyone's time is important, but your time is important. And then you start to think, this is a very low vibrational way to operate.
Mhm.
And I think but I think with guys, I think they have they have to go through that journey to get to that point. Every guy I've talked to has been like, to get to that point where he knows. It's kind of like saying, it's like when rich people say money isn't everything, and it's like, yeah, but I'd rather be rich to find out if that's the case myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly.
So I guess the question is, do you think that's the same for women? Do they have to go through that period of dating the wrong guy, being, maybe very sexually free or whatever, to really truly understand the value of her body and her sexual energy? Or do you think she can have that without doing that, essentially?
So it's so funny that you asked that because as you were explaining that, I'm like, everything that you're saying is probably what women would say as well about their journey.
Okay.
Now, does she have to do that? In society, unfortunately, because people are not receiving proper guidance, probably. I think that if there was more structure in households and these values were instilled at a younger age, and we had parents who were actually, instead of it being don't have sex with a bunch of people, talk to your kids and make them understand why, like actually developing and cultivating that so that women are walking out of homes with self-worth, they're confident, they're not seeking validation from men, relationships, then it wouldn't
Mm,
need to be a thing, right? So I think that when you're sure of yourself, there's certain things that you don't have to engage in for you to know what's not for you, right? Because that's a strong moral that you have. For me, it's
yes.
drugs, right? I know some people like to do drugs, and if that's your thing, no offense to you. I don't need to experience that to know it could go bad and all this stuff. I'm good there, right? It's a
Mm,
moral or a value that I have for myself. But I think the problem is that a lot of women don't have solid morals and values. And again, that goes back to there being a disconnect in the home.
yeah, 100%. I definitely want to touch on that, but let me go through some of these comments. Guys, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah.
If you're watching, we're having a great conversation. Tanisha is bringing the good stuff. As always, I always bring great guests on. Let's go through these. So, Lord Punisher says, Kit illustrated the issue perfectly. Too many women only want to decent, stable, reliable after they've had bad experience with playboys. I had someone, Sukena, someone who's on the show, dark hair. She's come on a few times, and she said that that girls have to experience the bad boys to appreciate the good. Do you think that's true?
um, probably.
Okay.
I think, like you said, it
I
gets
tried,
old.
guys. I tried. I tried for you
I
guys,
mean,
but they have to.
again, listen, but go back to what I said though. If the woman was raised properly and there's not an internal deficit, no. But a lot of women are
Mm,
experiencing that. So they need, again, to put their hand in the fire to realize, oh crap, like I'm gonna get burned. It's not working out in my favor, me continuously going through these cycles. So I
Yeah.
hate that that has to be the case, but also, I think that for some women, when you're not confident within yourself, and the whole nice guys finish last thing is very valid in this case,
Mm,
you if you feel like you're not a good woman, right? And you may never actually say this, but the way that you move shows that you might not respect yourself or your body. You're going to be intimidated by a good man. So you might not even be conscious of why you're repelling this type of man, someone who wants to do well by you, who wants to actually have a long life with you. You're
yeah.
repelling that because you don't feel good about yourself. So, do women need to go through bad guys? Maybe, but women also could
Mm,
just focus on themselves. And I think that the whole journey that we push, going back to what you previously asked about, why are we promoting promiscuity or, telling women to be sexually liberated? I disagree with that. A
mm.
lot of people will frame it like that's your way of figuring out what you like and you don't like, and you're learning yourself. Fast forward 10 years, women are finding that they learn the most about themselves when they're not dating or having sex, right? So I think
Big
the,
facts.
the
Yeah.
general guidance needs to shift. Like, okay, figure out your life, travel, do whatever you want when you're still in school or just out of college, but that might not mean, or it shouldn't mean, opening up your legs while you're doing
100%. And something that I always say, I had this chat with another guest on the show, where when you're used to toxicity, healthy and good feels boring.
that.
And when you're operating from a place that is broken or unhealed, someone treating you right should doesn't make when that doesn't make them more attractive, that's when you know that you're not operating from the right place. Because someone treating
Mhm.
you right should make them more attractive to you. Do you know what I mean? When
Mhm.
you're operating from a healthy place, and someone not treating you right should make them less attractive to you. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter how tall or successful or good looking he is, if he's not showing up in the ways that he said he would, if he's not showing up in the right ways and treating you right, I think for some people, a lot of women experience, oh, okay, I want to try and get that from him, instead of seeing that actually that energy is actually a turn off. If because I have a level of self value for myself and I know how I should be treated, and the guy who's going to treat me that way, maybe he's not as tall, not as attractive, but a man treating me well should make him more attractive, even if he's not the guy you end up choosing. That should
Right.
definitely make him more attractive. Let me go through a couple more. Lord Punisher says, no man with any self-respect will provide slash protect a woman who rejected him 10 years prior. I would caveat that and say he would provide and protect on his terms. I think he
Oh,
would.
can you expand on that? What do you mean?
Well, it's I don't like to put it this way, but this is the easiest analogy I can give. It's kind of if you want to try and have a business deal with someone, you're offering something and you're offering to sell it to them for 10,000 and they say no. And then they come back to you 10 years later. They're like, hey, I actually want to buy it. And you're like, well, the price is 100,000 now.
Oh yeah. Price gone up. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like maybe on his terms. Nesta Bedford says 100% agreed, Kit. Men should stay moral enough, excuse me, to give women grace period time. Rather, I agree. I think sometimes as men, sometimes we can forget there's this pressure on women to get things figured out a lot quicker than us in the sense of what she wants to do with her life, in terms of career, in terms of relationship. I mean, even the fact of having children, there's a biological window for women. So I think sometimes we have to, and on top of that, there's a narrative in the culture which is swaying women the wrong way. So on top
Yeah.
of that, I think there's some graces, guys, we can do. And you know what, guys, if you're going to be the leader, take that leadership role, it is the leader who gives the most grace to his team. So we can lead by example. Lord Punisher says, I think men are the main issue. Men give the most attention to promiscuous women and are then surprised when women resort to promiscuity to get attention. That's bars. That is that is big facts. What do you think about that?
So I agree. I agree kind of. And so the reason why
Okay.
I'm hesitant is because I'm flipping this in my mind to kind of the opposite. So a lot of good guys good guys will say, well, I was raised in this family, I have these values, but I know women don't appreciate it, so I'm just gonna be a no good. I'm trying not to curse. Gonna be a no good guy anyway. And it's like
Mm,
I can understand why you would feel that way, but I'm also not an advocate of adjusting your morals or lowering your bar because of what society says, right? So I think if
mm,
your value is that you're going to be a good person regardless, then maybe not becoming what you are receiving opposition from or what has a negative stance based on your values are, you shouldn't be that person. You just try harder to find those who align with you. So I get it, but I think,
mm.
going back to that comment, that's a cop out. So for me, hindsight being 2020, if a man is going after promiscuous women, that shows me that that's not a guy who was ready to settle down at this point in his life. And if that is what I want at this time or what I want in the future, he should be a pass for me, not me changing who I am and what I want to fit where he is currently.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I think it was Mr. Dear Khan who also said that as well, that promiscuous women are rewarded by men. And so, what can we expect if more women are going to do that? But they're not rewarded by men because men aren't giving them commitment. They're not giving them the
Right.
ring. They're not
Right.
giving them the actual long-term investment that most women say that they want. I mean, they're giving them attention, but attention is like
Mhm.
junk food. Like, you can't survive on just junk food. Like, you need the good stuff, you need the healthy stuff, the stuff that's gonna sustain you. Guys, we appreciate I'm gonna do a couple more and then I'm gonna get back to the topic because I wanna talk to Tanisha about, father figure in the home. Let's
Mhm.
see. Murad Semra says, that is a dangerous mindset to approach in life because there are many other aspects of life that we don't adopt such an approach. I'm not sure what you're talking about. We probably passed that in conversation, so I'll go to your next one. That statement is simply an excuse to be absolved for making many errors in bad judgment in sexual partners, only to be given grace when it is absolutely crucial, make or break. Yeah, I don't think when I say give grace, I don't mean, at least for me, I'm not talking about lack of consequences. Because, for example, if a woman is a type of way out in these streets, you know, just by the way it happens, there will be some guys who just will be like, okay, I'm not going to choose that woman. So there are already going to be some
Mhm.
level of life consequences. But I mean, you can't, I don't know how you could punish her in a relationship with her if she did that. It's like, well, just don't choose her, if that makes sense. Let me do one more. Nesta says, be careful of bad boys, ladies. Being burned by the fire may include putting on hand mittens for that burning thing y'all cooked in the oven. Big facts.
Mhm.
Big facts. I hear that. I hear that. One thing I want to ask you. So you talked about kind of the guidance in the home, like
Mhm.
guidance in the home, which I think is super important. And I think I'm biased in this sense, but I do think that we don't have enough emphasis on the fatherhood and father figure and responsibilities and the role he plays in raising
Mhm.
boys and in raising men. So do you think if women
Yeah.
have proper guidance from a father figure, they would make better choices in men? Or do you think they would still say, I need to go through this, I need to try everything out to find myself?
I mean, I think you might have some stragglers, but I do think the vast majority would emulate what they're being told in the household. And then also,
Mm,
if you are coming from a long line of family who, they believe in marriage and people have been married for 25, 30 years, so they didn't have that era in their life where they were sleeping around because they found their person and that was it. You tend to emulate what you're seeing within your family. And sometimes that can be the opposite effect, which is negative, right? So
yeah.
if you have a history of broken relationships in your family, men aren't present, whatever the case may be, we often repeat those cycles. So as much as we would like to, I guess, ignore that fact, humans are habitual. We learn through experience. And so I do think that having a father present would be amazing.
Yeah. What do you think the mother figure plays in the role for like a son when it comes to his relationships with women? Do you think there's guidance she should give her son as well? Because guys are getting duped by women as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and I can actually answer this because I've had experiences where I've dated men who did not have a positive relationship with their mother.
Mm,
And from those experiences, I feel like the mother is their first example of who a woman is, right? So that can
Mm.
be good, but if it's not good, then the ill feelings that he has toward her, the dynamics that they experience together, that often translates to how he will treat women. So this particular person who I'm thinking about, their mother was very, she wasn't really emotionally present per se, like, very driven, all of those things, but that nurturing aspect wasn't there. So, of course, he grew up, he couldn't communicate well, but he also sought women who had that same persona. So,
Mm.
super driven. But I think that he treated women so poorly because he was picking women who pretty much are the archetype of his mom. And I'm not a therapist, I'm a psychology nerd, but I'm not a therapist. But I do think that for him, maybe it was a conscious, subconscious form of retaliation. Like, I'm dating someone who would match the profile of my mother. I treat you like dirt. I have a negative overall viewpoint of women, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Was there any sense of, because if not that his mum would obviously rely on him to like play the masculine role in the house or in necessarily, but do you think there was any element of, well, because he saw that the woman in his life, he didn't have to care for her in that sense that maybe guys typically do. Do you think he was like, okay, well, women can take care of themselves. They don't need me to worry about them, or they don't need me to, you know, they don't need me to create a space for them to feel safe. Do you know what I mean?
That could be the case for some people. In his case, no. I mean, I think that
Okay.
just assessing who he was as a person, he wanted to have that type of connection, right?
Oh, okay.
But, just because of the ill feelings that he had, the way that he was raised, it was difficult for him to get to that point.
Mm,
But then also, like, I think a lot of men like that too will often become womanizers or hop between different women, not only as a form of retaliation, but they're also seeking affection from women in that way too. But you don't know how else to get it. Like, am I equipped to be in a healthy relationship? Wow, I just had a moment where I realized, I'm like, maybe men do the same thing in that regard as women do, they don't realize it. Like, do you feel like with some men, I think it's, to take a step back, I think it's
go on.
human nature for us to want affection, right?
Yep.
And we talked about how some women, if they have some sort of insecurities, their self worth isn't where it needs to be, they seek that affection in sex. I
Mm,
think men might do that too, but maybe it's just more normalized for men to be that way because we're like, naturally men should sleep around. Could we be overlooking that dynamic is happening because we automatically think should be men should be that way in the first place?
So what's the question?
Do you think that there are cases where men are sleeping around because they want to seek affection or have connection or closeness to women, but they're not equipped or ready, or whatever the case may be, to be in a relationship? Do you feel like that dynamic happens, but we kind of overlook it or we mistake it for, oh, he's just being a man? Men are like that anyway.
Mm.
Like, is that an area that we're not focusing on enough?
It's a very good question. I think that would only really happen for the men who are older, maybe let's say in their 30s. And the reason I say that is because when a guy is young, the expectation for him to provide isn't there as much. So he can, because thing is, it is very much the case that guys will not get into a relationship yet because he doesn't feel he's in the position to be the kind of man he wants to be for the relationship, right? So, for example, and I'm just using this, there are other examples as well, but I'm just using this because it's the most common one that people can relate to. But a guy can be like, okay, if I'm not in a position where I can afford to take my girl on dates, where I can afford to maybe do things for us on nice occasions, if I'm not in a financial position to have a girlfriend, because I'm going to speak for the fellas, but yeah, having a girlfriend is an expense, right? If I'm not in a
It's an
position,
investment.
it's an investment. It's an investment. If I'm not in a position to make that investment, I'm not going to try and get into that position. But a man still has to eat. So I
Right.
think for guys who are young, they may still get into a relationship because the expectation of them being able to provide isn't really there. But when guys get older, as in, or when he starts dating women who are older, so if he's in his 30s, he's dating women in their late 20s, heading into the 30s, there is a level of expectation for him to be a provider to some extent. And so that's where I
Mhm.
can see it then happening, where he still wants the affection of women, but then he doesn't let any get too close to see that he's maybe not in the position he would like to be in for a relationship. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Um, so
It
yeah.
does. Yeah, I think I can see that. So, I guess the underlying thing is, like, both parties, men and women, right, both want connection.
Mm.
In my example where women are kind of seeking sex is because, like, there's maybe some insecurity where they feel like that they need to do that to get affection, right? For men, you're saying that it's more of the financial or tangible piece. So they might want the connection of a relationship, but because they're not financially there yet, they go the route of sleeping with women
Yeah, yeah.
casually to have that sense of connection.
Yeah, yeah, I 100%. I mean, I
Mhm.
think sleeping with women is also validation for men. There's a lot of validation, I guess for women too, but I think especially for guys because we know that women are the gatekeepers for physical intimacy. So if you're a guy, even if like work's not going well or whatever, but you can still get women. It's like, okay, cool. Well, I've still got that side of my manhood that I'm good enough to get women, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think do you know what the fancy that men have? They just want to be accepted for who they are. And
Mm.
unfortunately, they get into the real world and they realize that that's not the case. He has to build value in himself to get the opportunity with women. Like, a woman chooses a man, gives him the opportunity because of what he is, and then gets the relationship because of who he is. So I was I was talking to my girlfriend with this today actually.
Mm.
In every superhero movie, it has this message that as a man, to get the girl, you have to build value. So you take Spider-Man, right? What happens in the beginning? Nobody knows him. He likes Mary Jane, right? And she doesn't even know he exists. Not only does she reject, she doesn't even know he exists. Then he goes on
Mm.
this whole arc and journey, becomes Spider-Man, builds this value in himself, and then he gets the girl. This happens with Spider-Man, with Iron Man, with Hercules, like any superhero movie, like male hero movie, that is
Mhm.
always the pattern. He's not really anything in the beginning, doesn't get the girl, builds value in himself, becomes a hero, then he gets the girl. But he's still the same person, but
Yeah.
he's now just grown in himself in terms of the value that he brings to the world or his community. And so I think that is a point that guys can be quite sensitive about and insecure about. They're worried about not being accepted for who they are because maybe they don't bring what they would like to the table. That and we hear all the time, women's expressing what they want a man to bring to the table. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. And as you were talking about this, we often hear women are the gatekeepers of sex, which I totally agree. And it just kind of makes me think about how we talk about men striving to reach financial goals, right? Obviously, people want financial security, but men also understand that if I reach this certain level of life, I can have any woman I want, right? And it's because we push finances so much, right? Women,
Mm,
like you're saying, want a six-figure earner, and that's a heavy emphasis or whatever. And it just makes you think, like, I wish we would be, and not saying anything is wrong with financial stability, so please don't misinterpret that.
yeah.
But I think that we should be pushing other things as well. If we push, well, we want men who treat us with respect, men who are family oriented, men who are X, Y, and Z, and we push those to the forefront more, men would also strive for those things. But I think those qualities take a back seat.
Yeah, I think those qualities can only be shown once he's gotten the opportunity with the woman, but they're useless if he doesn't get the opportunity. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
on that, let me ask you, I know you don't speak for all women, but if you think the majority of women, if they had to choose between a guy who is in a very financially good position, but gives her very mediocre level of respect for the relationship that she would like, or he gives her the level of respect and affection and treatment in relationship she would like, but he's in a very subpar financial position, which one do you think most women would take?
Is there a certain age range you were discussing, or this is just all women?
Let's go for women who are looking to settle down and have a family. So let's say between 25 and 35.
Mm. I mean, even still, I think most women would probably choose the financial stability.
Okay.
And for some reason, like I think
That's why,
just the
Tanisha. That's
things
why
that
guys
come
focus on
with
the money.
I think that for some reason we are fascinated with the things that come with financial stability. Yes, like it's great to have someone who cares for you, but a lot of times like a lot of women are chasing men who don't even really invest in them financially, I guess you can say, but they're more so attracted to the lifestyle that being associated with them entails. So the glitz and glamour, the
Mm,
materialistic things, even if it's for a short period of time, women would like to chase that because it's fun. Like you get butterflies, it's like exciting and all those things. And the latter is probably seen as boring, like you said, or it's just not as glamorous, high profile if you were to date a man like that. So
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
think more women would
100%.
choose finances.
Do you think if a girl's in a point where she's going to settle down and find a husband, do you think she becomes more logical in who she chooses, like a lot more pragmatic?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I do. Yeah. But it's just
interesting.
again, I think it's the reality of the consequences. Like you can delay the impact of consequences as much as you want. Again, when you're 18, early 20s, oh, okay, later on down the line, that might be a problem, but I'm focused on right now. When the reality hits you and you're like, okay, this is in my face, like we need to make some changes or else this is not going to go in the way that I want. You start
Mm,
to be more logical because then it's like I hate to say it, but it's more like a survival mentality. Like you know this is what you want or what you feel you need to thrive, and so you
yeah,
go for it.
yeah, yeah, 100%. For you, kind of, because you've had such a journey in yourself,
Hmm.
from the first conversation we had to, where you're at now, and it sounds like you're in a great relationship. What have you what have you learned about what a man needs? Like, because I assume obviously you're with a good man, right? So
Yes,
what do you think?
yes.
What do you think you cultivated in yourself to attract that kind of guy that goes, Tanisha is the woman I want to do this for?
I find that people in general, but especially men, when they see that you are kind of a glowing in your aura, glowing in the sense that you are happy within yourself, and it's more like you are an additive to my life versus me clinging on and needing you out of
Mm,
desperation. I think that shows very obviously.
yeah.
And so it's the mindset of like I want you, but I don't need you. And so when you operate from that mindset, I think it's not to say that you're minimizing the role
Oh,
that anyone that you date plays in your life. Can you
yeah.
still hear me?
I'm so sorry. I
Okay.
can hear you. I think my camera's gone. My camera over here, but we're about to wrap up. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So it's not like you're minimizing the role of your partner, but you just operate from a space that I'm fulfilled and I have love within myself. So therefore, I have love to give.
Mm,
And going back to your question, I think that's what a lot of men are looking for. Respect is a big one, right? But just someone who is able to provide that sense of love versus someone who is feeling a deficit of it. And so if you don't have it, it's more difficult for you to give it in a healthy capacity. And so it's
yeah.
kind of pulling from them versus it being an addition to their life.
100%. I think, like you said, that energy, that radiation energy, the feminine invites the masculine as opposed to like you said, kind of clinging on to it as
Hmm.
well. Listen, we are gonna wrap it there, Tanisha. We appreciate your energy and time on this Sunday.
You're
Guys, thank you
welcome.
for tuning in, and we had some great comments in the section as well. Let me go through a couple last ones as well. ASDFX CVBN says, Kit, 70 years of feminism isn't enough to change millions of years of biological evolutionary gender role formation. I completely agree. Even if women are earning their own money, they still like a man who can provide. And Nesta Bedford says, not to sound chauvinist, saying there's a small group of men who have greedy Genghis Khan complex, no affection attached in conquering as many cookies, cakes, pies, pudding, milk, juice, nectar, etc. Yeah, some guys really just want to conquer laterally instead of horizontally. So laterally is they want to spread their seed
Mhm.
far and wide, instead of, okay, what kind of legacy am I actually building that's going to last past my life, outside of, I mean, it's great, I'm thinking of Nick Cannon and all his many kids, but I'm a bit like, you can't, are you a father? Are
All
you
his
the
many
best
kids.
father to all of them? But
Mhm.
yeah, but Tanisha, we appreciate you. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
Yes, so my YouTube platform is Tynesha Talks. Love having discussions like this. So if you are big on transparency, talking about relationships, growth, self-development from a positive space, you will enjoy my content. So that's my long form stuff. You can also find more day-to-day lifestyle and clips of my content on Instagram at Tynesha_Renee.
Yeah, buddy, we appreciate it. Well, Tanisha, thank you so much for joining us today. Guys, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with another live either next Sunday or Sunday after. And yeah, sending lots of love on your Sunday, guys. Tanisha, thank you. We appreciate you.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.